That's all I've got. That's the start of the podcast. Welcome to the official, unofficial podcast of the Melbourne Demons, the DeeBrief. I'm your host, Adrian Horton. Very sprightly because Jacob van Rooyen had a sensational day yesterday in his debut, and I'm joined by Lloyd Tofflon. It's been a long time, my friend. How are you?
Good, mate. Very, very good. Couldn't be happier after being pleasantly surprised with how well we performed and how Goodwin responded in the coach's box during the week. I know that there was a lot of people that would have been befuddled by the coaching staff's decision to move the Magnets, but then also to make some big decisions with taking out Ben Brown in the game and how pivotal that was and how much better we looked as a consequence because he was a human witch's hat. So then to complement that, having Van Rooyen perform the way he did, wow, like we've got someone seriously special. So I'm very happy. Oh, and also Marco Bezzecchi won his first race in MotoGP. So overall, spectacular weekend and Storm won. So very good.
Oh, Toff. Bloody hell. You got the trifecta or the quaddie there, mate. That's very impressive. And, mate, just before we talk more Dees, it is fantastic to have you on. It feels like it's been a long time. And in true Toff fashion, you just come in swinging, little jibe, a little go there. Big Benny Brown, who's by the way made a sensational start to the year. He's kicked 4 in the first round, 4 in the second round, but you just couldn't help yourself, Toff. You couldn't help yourself.
No, Ben Brown is the best, most accurate kick, arguably in the competition. And when we're moving well and the ball movement is a reflection of that inside our 50, and he gets to market with a long lead and straight out in front, he's spectacular at what he does. But the game yesterday wasn't lending itself to him, and I thought he wasn't impacting the game in the way that he probably has in the first couple of weeks and last year and the year prior. And Goodwin whether it was Goodwin, whoever made the choice, I thought it was dynamic and it changed the game.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. And Benny Lee, we've got technical difficulties. He is here. He will come back into the video room at some point in time. So just hold fire for all those Benny Lee fans out there. Don't stress. Benny will be with us shortly. I agree with you, Toff. I think it was a clever move. It's fascinating, the tactical sub now. Like, when do you swing it? When do you use it? I think clearly yesterday it had a huge effect on the way that we were able to open up the ground, particularly in our forward half. But the best thing about yesterday for me, Toff, the best number one thing for me was the game looked like it was going to script for Sydney in the same way that it did last season in the qualifying final. It was similar in that round 12 encounter as well in the regular season, where we had a fast start, everything was going for us, we were clinical, and then they just gradually ground us down. They got back into the game. And I thought in the third quarter, when it got back to a goal, I started to worry and stress. And I thought, fuck, here we go again. Sydney are going to run over the top of us. But the beautiful thing is that Melbourne were able to compose themselves. They went down the other end, and it was Cade Chandler who kicked a vital goal from a difficult angle. And then we got on he was really good, and we got on a roll again. And for me, it was a reminder yesterday that Melbourne are a very good football team. And the best teams in the comp are the ones that can arrest momentum and then put the foot to the throat. We put the foot to the throat against a contender, boys. They're a proper outfit, and they're going to be there in the last few weeks of September. Make no mistake about that. So I thought it was a brilliant performance. We were resilient. We got our shit together. I thought they were going to do us in there for a little bit in the third quarter. So for us to pull away, I reckon, Toff, that was the best outcome and probably the best way to win yesterday. We could have won at a canter. We may not have got challenged at different times, but the fact that we did and we responded emphatically, number one, hands down, the best thing for me to come out of the game yesterday.
It's the best we've looked in 6 months. Like
in 6 months?
Well, when we're now, at this point, and I thought at this point last year we were looking spectacular. I haven't seen that version of Melbourne in a long time, where Bailey Fritsch did his thing and popped up and effectively turned the game with just a few moments of brilliance. And then all of a sudden, before you knew it, we piled on. I don't know how many goals we amassed in that little period of play, but it would have been 10 minutes. And I think we poured in 6 or 7 goals. So we looked really, we looked great. And what was more pleasing is that players like May, Viney, I wouldn't say necessarily played spectacular games. And I think while Track got a lot of the ball, you couldn't point to his game and say that was one of his better ones. But other players, like you said, you look at Fritter, who looked his best, which was really encouraging. And then guys like Petty, who were just competitive all day and irritant, which Benny pointed out, and just getting under players' skin and setting the tone with the physicality. So there was heaps of upside. I think Sparrow had an excellent game. Chandler, these guys that you don't necessarily Rivers, like you could go the list of those second tier players, or what we would say second tier players that I think performed better than a lot of our top tier. So overall, you can't not be happy.
Could not agree more. And Benny Lee's back in the video room with us, and mate, it's a bloody pleasure to be speaking to you again. And firstly, before you start to dissect it in a bit of detail, I just need to let you know, when you weren't in the video room before, I reckon Toff's probably, 10, 15 seconds into talking about the game, and he just couldn't help himself. A little drive-by with Benny Brown. What'd you refer to him as, Toff, just so Benny gets the context?
Oh, I heard all that. Human witch's hat. I heard all that.
I
was here
there
watching. I was listening to everything. I was wondering why you guys weren't throwing to me. I was like, I'm getting cut out here. Right. But no, I'm back now. Yeah, I'm back now. So I thought I was very, very nervous before that game, because the way we played against Brisbane, I think everyone knows that scoreboard flattered us. It was not a good look. I think the things I was looking for this week were like a lot better pressure around the ball. I think our contest work had to be better. And I also thought that like we needed to see some synergies developing with the midfield and Grundy. And I think we started to see that. I think Goody pointed out in his press conference, like he's a much different ruckman to Max. And I think we need to work out, I think we're still probably working out how he fits into our midfield in the way he plays. So that was awesome. I do give Goody some credit for the magnet switching around. I think before the game, it's a big call to drop T-Mac and Harms, who've been stalwarts of the team for a long time. So I think those were 2 gutsy calls. I think the other thing with subbing Brown out, I think they said in the press conference he might have had a tight back. Looked very likely that he did have a tight back, because if the ball went to ground, he like basically couldn't bend over. But look, I think it was a good call to sub him out and not persist with it if it wasn't working. He took off a player that, had a niggle and put a player on that was fresh. And, he's one of those players that can be a tough matchup in the forward line, because he's good overhead, quite mobile, very creative, and a very penetrating kick. So I think we look just instantly better with that extra pressure and the extra running player around. I do think it's going to be interesting for us next week how we, come at the contest against like a lowly West Coast. We seem to like get ourselves up for that Sydney game. I think we knew we had to respond. And what I'm really praying is that next week we bring that intensity that we showed, because that was a really, really good game from like a contest point of view. It was almost finals like at least a Melbourne finals like game, in the sense that we just like to blow teams out late. But it was one of those things where it was actually a really, really strong contest. I think both teams can probably say that like around the ball, it was very intense. There was a lot of good play. It was a great game to watch, I think, from an independent supporter's point of view as well. But yeah, I think we definitely needed that. It gave me, made me realize, I think 80 were talking off air, that it was very much like a game that we're like, okay, no, we are good. We can take it. We can smash another contender if we need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Sydney, that wasn't, I don't know about you guys, but that wasn't like the Sydney side we played sort of last year. I think they looked a little bit shell shocked in that first quarter. Like they weren't really expecting us to come out like that. But they fought back, and the pleasing thing is we sort of were able to like arm wrestle it back and start putting some more on the scoreboard. And that accurate kicking,
100%.
Geez, what a difference that makes.
Yeah, huge. I think 16-1, something absurd from set shots, and our biggest score at the MCG since round 20, 2018, boys. So it's good going. And something we've been crying out for before we talk about is Simon Goodwin's. He's almost been on the pile a little bit from a tactical standpoint. I know, Toff, you've been huge on this, like the inflexibility of Goody over the journey. Melbourne are moving the ball with more purpose. It's direct. It's rapid. We've bought into something that I've been banging on about for ages now, and it's that Collingwood and Sydney mode and the way that they like to use the corridor and the way that they change the angles and lower the eyes. And I think we're finally starting to see some tactical flexibility from Goody. We're finally starting to see a Melbourne that are quick and rapid with their ball movement. Been crying out for it. And doesn't it make an incredible difference as well? Like you see Melbourne scoring at will yesterday. We've proven to ourselves that we do have a lot of fire up front. We do have a lot of attacking power, which is something that I think most media commentators and pundits and people have pointed out is probably our Achilles heel. Well, that's almost being put to bed now, because clearly when you move it as fast as we were at times yesterday, it gives everyone an opportunity to hit the scoreboard. We've been a little bit too controlling, a little bit too pragmatic, a little bit too slow and laborious, probably back half of last year. We're seeing a distinct difference now. So that's what I love. And it was great to go to the footy and watch Melbourne play entertaining footy instead of that scrappy, let's make it ugly, we pride ourselves on that, blah, blah, blah. Look, there's no doubt we probably still do. And the back six or the back seven that roll through there are still trying to make it ugly, but we're getting the ball on quickly. There's a lot more freedom in the way that we're playing our footy, and I think that clearly is the way that you win premierships now in this modern era. And for Melbourne to start making the MCG a fortress again, that was an absolute must. Have 2 50-point wins against 2 really good outfits in the first 3 rounds is a step in the right direction, because, make no mistake, Melbourne have had a real issue at the home of footy. But if we can turn that into a fortress, then watch out. Like, we can clearly take it up to anyone. So that, for me, boys, from a holistic perspective, the ball movement and accepting that we needed to change at the back end of last year when we went out in straight sets. Goody spoke about it a lot in the preseason. He's actually followed through, Benny, and he's actually doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's what he talks constantly about, learnings, right? Like, I know he used to drive us insane. Like earlier on in the piece, he used to just constantly talk about learnings, and it looks like, you know, he's taking those learnings on board and changing, which is really important. And I think also probably that filters down to the assistant coaches too, like, and not being so rigid in the way that they're sort of all approaching how we play. And it was pleasing to see that, you know, we did still do well defensively, but we launched a lot of attacks from our back half and we scored heavily from turnover. And I think that's something we didn't do a lot of last year, particularly later in the year. And I think that's something that we needed to really work on. I think the other thing around the contest was the other big thing for me that I think really helped us to score well, is that we were able to even up the clearances. And I think last week we kind of got smashed in contested balls, smashed in clearances. I think even at the start of that game, Sydney were like some extraordinary number, like up in center clearances, right? And we were able to peg that back. So I think that was a good thing as well. And it helped us score heavily, because when you have that assertiveness around the contest, it makes it easier to sort of defend, and it also makes it easier to attack from there as well. So yeah, that was also very pleasing. But I think just want to pick up on like what you guys said before around the, I guess, the second tier players. I think like Rivers was exceptional on Heaney. He beat him one-on-one a number of times, which is no mean feat. That was incredibly impressive. Yeah, Petty just being an absolute pest the entire game. And you can see like having a forward that has that mongrel in him is so important, right? Like, it just unsettles defenders. Yeah, it's just...
Yeah, talk about Petty.
He got to every single time watch the replay. Every single time he had to go, he went.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I'm going to see if someone else jumps and flies at the ball. He knew that, if I'm not only going to get my hands on it, I'm going to make sure I hit it hard. It wasn't a Ben Brown, I can't get there. I'm just going to let someone else go for it. It was like,
yeah,
I'm going to go. I'm going to make sure that worst case scenario, it hits a deck, and Chandler, Spargo, hopefully Cozzy, in future weeks can all benefit from it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing the other thing we sort of probably should mention is that Petty actually, I think one thing that maybe Brown's been guilty of in the past, and Fritter certainly has been as well, is once the ball sort of, once it's clear they're not going to take a mark, is what do they do after that? And I think Petty showed a lot of them the way. It was you follow up, and also Roo did as well. I think he had the second highest tackles for us behind Oliver, right? So then as a key forward in your first game, that's exceptional stuff. Right. And I think that was the most pleasing thing for me. It was the way he competed and followed up. That wasn't necessarily the goals he kicked, that they were great, but it was the intent that he showed. That you think about, not to bring up poor Sammy Weedman, but things that we got frustrated with him about, Roo doesn't seem to have those behaviors, right? He follows up, he's intense, he wants to put hurt on the opposition. I think his first real contest, I think he ran into Errol Goulden and just flattened him. Just set the tone. His first game of AFL footy as a key forward, just ran through a bloke. Didn't do it unfairly. He just lined him up and put the body through him, and it was just set the tone. For me, I was like, this kid is going to be fine. If that's his first contest, he'll be fine.
You absolutely nailed it, Benny. That was exactly what I was saying to a few people in the stands. I said, look at the kid. His appetite for the contest as soon as he got on the ground was infectious. It was there for all to see. He's an exceptionally tough kid. You could tell, he embraces contact. He wants contact. And he's really clever at the way that he positions his body. That was as good as a debut as you could probably have. You're kicking 3, you win by 50. He has a clear impact on the game. His first touch as well, where he hit up Nibbler and then Nibbler went back and slotted it through, was poised. He had a calmness about himself when he had the ball in hand as well. And Toff, for me, I just think you got to persist with this kid. I was speaking to Scotty about it over the phone, and Scotty said, you just got to keep him in now for as long as you can. He needs continuity. There's going to be weeks where he has down games, of course. Continuity may be something that we never gave Sam Weideman. This kid probably deserves it because he looks like he's actually the full package, Toff.
Couldn't agree more. Keep him in. I don't know, and I don't want to do the wrong thing and say that Tom McDonald should be kept out at the expense of Van Rooyen if he's not performing, because if he's not performing, then you have to reward. Yeah, you have to keep people accountable, irrespective of how good they can be. I think we're in that window now, and we know that T-Mac's been more than a servant. He's been spectacular for us over the course of the journey. So, not to say T-Mac's done, but I would love Goodwin to show patience with Van Rooyen. And if he has 2 or 3 games where he's not performing, he doesn't chop him. And I think he gives him an opportunity to get that continuity because, as a young player, that's so important for their confidence. So I think assuming we keep winning, I see Van Rooyen staying in. I find it was probably going to be challenging for T-Mac to come back in. But you look at everyone performing in the VFL over the weekend, and clearly the attitudes are good because Tomlinson goes back after, I think, being pretty stiff, getting dropped and having 33 touches and being best on ground. So having that sort of depth is massive for us, and I'm a big fan of Van Rooyen. Also, I want to give a shout out to Judd McVie because I reckon he did some pretty awesome things and has continued to improve. When I first saw him, who on earth is this? I'm going to be honest. Who is Judd McVie? And he looks like he should be an accountant. No offense, Benny. I don't know you're an accountant, but he looks like he should be in finance, wearing a pencil suit and just a numbers man. But he's got this uncanny ability to move, and he reminds me of a young Jeremy Howe, just the way he's so balanced and poised. Sorry, Benny.
No, it's fine. I get it all the time.
Hey, hang on, Toff.
Also, last thing, Kate Chandler also, like another guy that has been hard pressed for opportunity, and I can't fault anything he's done over the course of the last few weeks, and he continues to improve.
Yeah, and this speaks volumes as to this is why a good VFL program is important, or a good reserves team is important, because you look at guys like, even like going back further, like Neil Bullen. I know he's a maligned player at times, but I think he's super important. I think he's super important to us personally. But like you remember, like back years ago, he was having like 30 to 37 touches a game, kicking goals in the VFL, like wasn't getting in the side. Yeah. And, you know, he almost got traded, I think, to Adelaide at one point earlier on. And, you know, he worked his ass off and became like a, you know, first pick sort of player, or not, well, best 22 player, not first pick, but he was one of those players that's always in the side. Even then you go Chandler, he was, again, doing the same thing. And even Van Rooyen, like last year, there were games where he had awesome games, we just weren't playing him. But I think like that, having that patience and allowing those players to develop like the right behaviors and the fitness base and whatever else you want to call it is super important. And like even McVee, like I didn't even know he was on the radar. Like I didn't know he was any good last year in the VFL. I don't know if he was. But like, I don't know about you, Toff, but I find his kicking action real weird. It looks strange, but it works.
Ungamely. Yeah.
But it works. Like he's a great kick. And he's cool, calm, he moves really smoothly. I don't think he's overly quick, but he just moves really smoothly and finds, like, hits targets, chooses the right option, makes quick decisions. Could say the same thing about Chandler as well. He makes quick decisions, like Spargo, just poised when he has the ball in the hand.
They don't look rushed.
Yeah.
Like that game was played at such a high intensity. And Judd McVee's got 3 games under his belt. Chandler's got 13. Then Bowie's got 20. Like you can go almost rivers. Like you can kind of go through our list for those younger guys, and none looked overwhelmed by the moment. Not at all.
Yeah.
I thought.
No.
Howie was elite again, and he's improving. Like Salem, does he come straight back in?
I don't know.
He's too far away.
Yeah, I feel like
not only performing, you can't be like, hey, sorry, like you're a walk up start now.
I don't think Salem is a walk up start at the moment, because I think, one, he's been injured. He's been injured, and he's probably not going to be fit enough for ages. He's going to have to do like not a full preseason, but a preseason within the season to get fit enough. I don't think he's one of those players that's a naturally fit player. So I think like he's going to, and he's got that thyroid issue, which can be like incredibly debilitating. I hear. I'm not a doctor, so I hear. But yeah, I don't know. I think like for me, like the back line looks good. So I'm hesitant to change it. Like I think the only players that are out right now that are probably like straight back in are like Max and Cozzy, right? Like,
yeah,
they're the only two I can that I can think of immediately that I would be like, they're definitely back in straight away.
I think there's only one probably change. There's probably only one change coming into the Eagles game, and it's if Benny Brown needs a rest because he's got a sore back, then Cozzy comes straight in, and that's it. You just leave it as is. Like, you can't change what was, as Toff said off the top, like probably our best winning formula and our best team performance that we've had in a long, long time. Like, that was reminiscent of 2021 levels, right? And I thought even in our 10-0 run last season, we were only firing for about, I don't know, a quarter here, a quarter and a half there, and it got us over the line. So it was very much we like flicked it and then we just coasted. It was very, very much like that. We didn't really get the groove for a whole game. Whereas I think this, even though there were momentum swings, I think we were able to nullify them a lot. And I think there was there weren't periods where I was like worried about what they were doing. Even when they started coming back, I was like, this is just their time. Like, we're going to start, they're expending a lot of energy doing this. And can they keep this up? And I think like I just had a feeling that we would settle, arrest momentum back. I don't know why. I can't explain it given how nervous I was going into the game. But there was a level of calm that I had. Like normally I'd get up and I'd move around and like go putt some golf balls if I was nervous. But yes, I was able to sit there and watch it and be calm about it, which is unlike me in those situations. So I don't know how, Benny. I honestly don't know how, because we were getting very nervous at the ground. I said it off the top.
Yeah.
It was almost the same script as the qualifying final. Like Melbourne start brightly, they get a lead, and then Sydney just gradually grind us down. They claw us back. And it was this horrible feeling of it's happening again. And I wouldn't have been able to stomach it, honestly, particularly Sydney. Sydney shit me. I've been sick of them beating us over the journey nearly every single season for the past, it's almost 20 years now. So if there was ever a team that we owed a thumping to on the MCG, in front of what I will say, and I hope all the Melbourne supporters that were at the ground agree with this, it was freaking raucous. Melbourne supporters, I feel like we've got our mojo back. Like in the stands yesterday, people were going absolutely mental. Like mental. It was
what you love to hear.
It was amazing to see. I just feel like in 2022, last year, there was a bit of a malaise that kind of went over the supporter base. Not in a really negative sense, but more in a, we've just come off the back of a premiership. There wasn't that thirst. COVID as well is a good point, Toff. There wasn't that like thirst for footy. There wasn't that like hunger and desire to be loud and call for every holding the ball in the same way that Collingwood do. Like people this is the thing that I find quite strange. People get a bit sick and tired of the way that Collingwood supporters, they yell and scream for free kicks, even when they're not there. That's that's an awesome thing. If your supporter base is so up and about, they want to scream for the ones that aren't even there. That shows you that they're fully engaged. They're embracing the contest. 100% off. And yesterday, Melbourne fans were baying for everything. And I thought, I just looked around at one point in the third quarter when we got humming and we started to pull away. And I looked around and I thought to myself, I'm like, Melbourne supporters want this flag at the G. They genuinely want it. And I feel like the fire in the belly is back with the supporters. And hats off to the supporters as well. Yesterday, 43,000 at the G. The Grand Prix was on. If that wasn't on, it could have been a 50K crowd. Definitely outnumbered the Sydney fans. I felt like the Sydney contingent didn't really rock up. I felt like there would have been more Sydney supporters there.
The F1.
So they went to the F1, Toff. So, I mean, I just wanted to make that point today. I was thinking about it last night. Like, I reckon the Melbourne supporters, I'm tipping my hat to them because a lot of people have said some stupid things about the crowds and we're not rocking up, and it's all infactual bullshit that Sam McClure is pushing at the moment. It's absolute hogwash. I think we're 4th or 5th in average home crowd attendance last year. We didn't get the home games against Collingwood for Queen's birthday and the Anzac Eve one against Richmond, and yet we were still 4th or 5th in home crowd attendances. It's fucking bullshit, and Melbourne supporters are back, and they're loud, and I loved it. It was one of the most enjoyable afternoons at the footy that I've had since the 2021, probably the 2021 run, maybe the Richmond game on Anzac Eve in round 6, 2021 was my probably favourite win of that season, the regular season, not the finals, of course. And it kind of felt like that yesterday, and it was bloody awesome to be there. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out and give the Melbourne supporters a massive pump up. Boys, just on Van Rooyen as well.
Yeah, let's talk about him.
And I think I just want to talk about him again just really quickly. So we love getting caught up in the statistical nature of footy now, and the game is flooded with stats. There's so much data, and fucking David King and Lee Montagna are doing their first crack thing, and they're in the war room, and they're doing all this crazy shit. Anyway, the thing I want to say about Jacob Van Rooyen is when he comes off the ground after kicking his first goal and the crowd embraced him, just seeing the smile on that kid's face, that was such a beautiful thing. Like, I think we get caught up in, like, what's this bloke doing? How many numbers has he had? Like, to see a kid just with this beaming smile, just looking around at the stands thinking, what is this? What is this drug? Give me more of this. The guy's been playing down at Casey. It can get pretty wet and windy down there and pretty horrible, and he's got hundreds of people clapping him. And then he comes off the ground. He's got tens of thousands of Melbourne supporters idolising him and yelling out "Rooyen." And just to see his reaction to it, that's what footy's all about for me, Benny.
I think it can have two effects on you, right? Two different, depending on the person you are. I think it can either like make you nervous when you hear it, because like everyone's on me, the ball's coming down to me, I better not stuff this up. or it can really make you pump out your chest and walk a bit taller. And I think it really depends on the mindset of the person. I think we've had other players over the years where there's been a similar sort of thing, and maybe perhaps they've wilted under that spotlight. And then we've had other players who embrace it. And I think around the competition, you could probably say the same thing. And I think, yeah, for him, like you could tell, like when he that was something that put, like, I don't know, added fuel to the fire that was already there. And he started just walking taller, and he was hitting packs and asserting himself. It was just awesome to see. It energized him in a way, I think.
Yeah, and I think it did. And I love the cult figure, almost subconscious understanding from the supporter base that, like, we're just going to go with Roo, and everyone just bought into it. And it caught on within, God, I reckon it was only 10, 15 seconds as soon as he got his first touch. And everyone was like, all right, this is what we do now. So this is the new, I guess, ooze that we used to do back in the day. But Toff, we've spoken about Roo enough, and we bloody love him. But we've got to talk about a man that's played 150 games of AFL. I reckon he may have played 10 bad games out of those 150. Clayton Oliver yesterday, listen to some of these numbers. 25 disposals, 80% efficiency, 15 contested, which was ranked second on the ground, 2 goals, 9 score involvements, which was ranked equal first on the ground, 7 tackles, which was ranked first on the ground, and 475 metres gained, which was ranked second on the ground. Clayton Oliver yesterday, he had 1 turnover. He had 12 against the Lions. He had 37 possessions against them last week, but his ball use was horrific. Clayton Oliver yesterday has 12 less touches, but he was as impactful and as effective as I've ever seen him before. He was superb. We are so lucky to have him. We're literally watching potentially the GOAT of the Melbourne Football Club. And his performance yesterday was just typical Clarry. It's just Clarry just doing his thing, just playing footy.
I have to shout out Lee Lavery, who's a guy that I met at a cycling event. He's a great man. And he was a Dees man, and it was hilarious because I rode up to him, and his kit was literally the colour, good kit, Rafa colours, but in Dees. And we chatted Dees. And on the way home, and it was just poignant, and it was good timing because he's like, Clarry, in his 150 games, has this kid ever played a bad game? And, like, you have to think about it. And who has a better career midfielder-wise than Clayton Oliver? And it was a good question. And then that graphic came up during the game with the most contested possessions before 150 games. And you look at the players that are in that graphic, and he is miles ahead of them, like miles. And I'm sure if that same analysis was undertaken for other key statistics going down the David King, Lee Montagna thing. But ignoring all that, then you talk about what he's done already. 4 BNFs, 2 AFL players, AFL coaches player of the year, which is more important in my opinion than the Brownlow medal. He will win a Brownlow medal, and he should have probably already, but for the fact that he shares the midfield responsibility with arguably the second best midfielder and arguably the best midfielder in the comp. What a luxury. But I think you can't go past how from day dot, there has not been a single game where he hasn't at some point imposed himself on it. And we're 6 years into his career and we're having this conversation. I mean, he's going to get better. At 24 years old, he's not the best version of himself. And BT said it yesterday when they were talking about it with Cameron Ling. And I can't stand Cameron Ling because he hates Melbourne. But he couldn't concede the point. And it's like, you can make the case that in 2 or 3 years' time, he is the best D ever. And there's not going to be an argument for it because he'll continue to excel and do what he does. But how can you get any, like for him, my thing is, how can Clayton Oliver be better? Like in terms of what other than maybe kick more goals. And if he starts doing that, like you have to give him his shine. Like he is arguably the best player in the competition.
If he starts kicking goals on a regular basis, he goes from being like in like the Melbourne greatest of all time to being in the conversation of like 3 of the like top 5 players of all time. Like
100%.
By the end of his career, like he he's and the way
Triple
the other
flags,
thing, yeah,
flags maybe.
I mean the way he plays, right? You think about this, the way he plays, just how durable he is as well. Like that is remarkable. Like that just shows you just how much. Not only does he prepare, right? And you think about how he was drafted and all that backstory about being like a overweight kid who didn't really know what to do, and that changed to become how good he is now. And look, I don't know. I think sometimes I don't know. This sounds crazy, but I think sometimes people still underrate him. I really do. I think like he is
100%.
He's that good. Like when you said he's had 10 bad games, I honestly I couldn't think of him. I can't think of a game where I've been like.
Whoever listens to the debrief and whoever follows.
If you can give me 10 bad games,
try and pinpoint more than 3 bad games. Like objectively, 3 bad games. I don't reckon they exist. Like
and like
I reckon. I was just going to say, boys, I reckon I've done him a massive disservice by saying 10. I'll take it back, Clarry.
I honestly, when you said 10, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Like there might have been a couple of games where he was tagged, maybe, that he like earlier on when he was trying to work all that out. But I mean, I remember his debut. I was just like, oh my goodness. Like
2 Brownlow
kid. But like, I just remember thinking like, what the hell? Like where is this kid come from? Like he is clean, he's classy, he's quick, he's aggressive. Like he's got some of the best hands I've ever seen. Like it was remarkable. You just go, did we really pick this kid up at like what is it? Pick 3? Was it pick 3 or pick 4?
Pick 4. Can I tell you a story about that? I was on the train yesterday, Benny.
Yeah.
And there's a few Sydney supporters on there, and they're all pretty cocky and they're pretty confident going into the game. And I was just like, had an ear out, just having a little listen to them. They started talking about, it's Clayton Oliver's 150th today. And they were like, oh yeah, he's pretty good, blah, blah, blah. And then one of them, I think there were 4 of them. One of them's like, I reckon Mills on the same level. Callum Mills. So I looked it up.
Far out.
Hear me out. I looked it up. And I went to Wikipedia, searched Callum Mills. Anyway, Callum, he was picked 3 in the same draft. Didn't even realise.
I knew that.
So
I did know that.
Not only, I didn't. And not only have they passed on Clarry, and let's get one thing straight. Callum Mills, you're a good footballer. I looked at his accolades, and it was 1 All-Australian last year and 1 BNF, which was last year for the Swans as well. And I just turned to the guys. I turned around and I go, Callum Mills. And they go, yeah, what about him? And I go, 1 BNF. And they go, yeah. And I go, yeah, 1 BNF and 1 All-Australian. They're like, oh, yeah. I go, do you want me to read Clayton Oliver's? And they go, yeah, sure, read it out. And I just started going, 4 BNFs, tied with the most ever at the club. We'll probably go on and win 8. So he might be 4 clear of the next best, which is Steins and Fontaine. They're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, 3 All-Australians. I'm like, oh, fuck, 3. Has he got 3? One guy,
it should be
one
4.
guy was like, oh, has he got 3? I thought he only had 1. One guy goes, I thought he only had 1. I was like, oh, well, he's got 3. So anyway, I said, Coaches Association Award. He's won it twice. He's won it back-to-back as well. And I go, the only player to do that outside of Clayton Oliver was Gary Ablett Jr. And then one guy just goes, all right.
Sorry, jump in. I didn't know that.
One guy just goes, this is how it ended, Toff.
Is that not?
I know, it's fucked. This is how it ended. The guy just looks at me.
Yeah.
No, he just looks at me and he goes, yeah, I think we're stuffed here, boys. Yep. Clarry's pretty good. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. No,
and then I just went back to my phone and we just stopped talking. So anyway,
I'm glad
that was fun yesterday.
Just a little reality check.
Talking about that.
That's good. Like, what were you going to say?
I love that.
He has the worst haircut in the AFL. Flat out.
Oh, hands down.
Clarry.
He looks like a Viking.
Yeah,
it suits him. I love it. He's honestly like a berserker. Just the way he runs around the park. It actually, I love it.
And
There's nothing better. Like this, I think it was the second goal he kicked when he was streaming through, and those red locks are just. He looked like one of those redhead matches. You know the pack of that. It was just when he's in full flight like that, you just like, this is just beautiful to watch, isn't it? I don't know. I think I still pinch myself about how lucky we are to have him. He's just, I still think he's underrated outside of the Melbourne Football Club. I do. I really, really do. The fact that like people are saying like, I know Nick Dacos is a great player, right? Not saying he's not, but I'm sorry. Like to say, I think someone said that he's the best player in the competition. There is no fucking, but there's no fucking way that he is the best player in the competition if Clayton Oliver is playing in that competition. Like, I'm sorry. There is, like, we probably have the two best midfielders in the league, in my opinion, or like you'd be two of the top three if you put like maybe like Bont in there or someone else. But
Cripps,
I don't know.
It's pretty good.
Cripps,
but like, is good, but they don't do what our two do together.
Yeah, like, I think what makes them yes. What you're going to say, Toff, I think, is what makes them so good is how well they work together as a 1-2 punch.
Yeah. They wax better than any other midfield combo since, like, your Voss, your Black, you know, the Fab Four days. Like, it's just...
Or the Judd
so many
Cousins.
Times again, I think if I could go back and watch it, like, how many times Clarry just knew... Because a lot of his crap kicks were because he was under pressure and he had to just do that quick snap over his shoulder. But, like, how many times you don't get that awareness unless you have that synergy, and, like, he would just pop one over the shoulder and Track would just snaffle it and go, or vice versa. The way they wax is just so good. And I just want to shout out the Clarry hype train, and I'm glad because Benny was spoken about it in our group chat, and it's good that it's going public because Clarry needs more shine. But BroDee Grundy yesterday, well, he was the closest version of the best version of him that I've seen since some years. His follow-up play,
his link-up running.
Like just being an extra midfielder. I think he had 9 score involvements. That was spectacular. And to do it and just to laugh and go, we still have Gorn to come back in, and they haven't even worked out their best version of themselves. So it's exciting.
You absolutely nailed it, and that is exactly where I wanted to go. BroDee Grundy yesterday was just superb. He took the responsibility on, and he shone. He shone. And imagine being Max on the sidelines, like Coach Max yesterday, working with him, prepping him during the week, hoping that he performs. There's all this added pressure on him to go out and prove why we went and got him to the club. It was so good to see. Like, I'm just happy for him, the person, number one, because he is under a little bit of duress. He is under a bit of pressure to perform, prove that he can still play at the level, still prove that he can be that version that you're talking about, Toff. So I think even just for him, not only is it great just to have a great game and get all the Melbourne supporters on board, we're all on board. We're all behind him. We all want to see him do well. He seems like a great fella. But I think just the confidence levels that he'll take out of that, it's just a reminder to him that he can play footy, and he can play footy at a really, really high level. So I think he'll get more out of that mentally, in my opinion, than he will out of just going through and looking at the stat lines and the vision and whatever. Like, he knows that he belongs. He knows that he can continue to get better, and he knows he can still be one of the premier ruckmen in the comp. So what a great game for him, and what a great little reminder to the rest of the competition as well.
Yeah, and I think playing his way as well. It's the important part of that. He doesn't have to be Max Gawn. He can be BroDee Grundy and fit into the team. And I think a lot of people prior to the season were like, how does Grundy fit into this Melbourne team? And I think we just saw the answer. It's he can play his way and play the way that that comes naturally to him. He doesn't have to change the way he plays. He doesn't have to become like Max Gawn 2.0. He can be BroDee Grundy and play really well. Just be BroDee and just be himself, play your game. And I think that will give him as much validation as anything. He doesn't have to do anything else differently other than be the player that he's always been. He doesn't have to do anything else. Just be the player you've always been, play your natural game, and you fit into this team just fine. Like, he is a dual Australian ruckman. I don't know why people were reluctant to get him. When we lost our backup ruckman in Jackson, I said this when we got him. I said, I don't understand why people are like, we lost a ruckman and we've gone and got arguably one of the next best 3 in the competition at a discount.
Yeah.
It just made sense. It's just showing why it was a great call by Goodwin and the recruiting staff.
He's got a point to prove.
Exactly. Collingwood cast him out. They're like, we're going to go with Darcy Cameron and Mason Cox. You don't think that gives him a fucking chip on his shoulder? If I was him, I'd have a chip 100%. On my shoulder about it. I'd want them to realise they made a mistake.
It was talk 2 years ago, and I was not part of that, but the chatter was that Brodie Grundy's, one, a better ruck than Gawn, and two, he was arguably the best player in the competition for a period of time. Now, never felt that was the case on both fronts, but you've got a guy who's, what you said, Benny, easily top 3, top 4 ruck in the comp when healthy, and he's our second ruck. So he's got an opportunity to get 6-7 weeks of games under his belt to get back to form, to get fitness. And that's the other thing. We're not seeing the best version of Brodie Grundy, which is so exciting. So think about Viney fit, Track, Clarry, Brodie Grundy. And then, we'll throw in Max Gawn into that.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's
Horse said it. Didn't he, 80? Did you listen to Horse's press conference? He's like, you just look at that Melbourne midfield and it's just littered with all Australians. He's like, just everyone's an All Australian. He's like, it's kind of like you look at where they are, and you could tell. When you look at him in the face, he was kind of saying you got to remember, we're not competing against just any ordinary midfield. This is a midfield even without their captain and an All Australian captain. They've still got all these All Australians in the team. It's pretty tough. Was Lockie Hunter an All Australian too, or am I? Maybe not.
Maybe
not. Maybe in the premiership year. We can go and look that up. But you're right.
But I think you look at the quality across that midfield. And Ed Langdon, arguably, I think in my opinion, he's the best pure winger in the league.
Yep.
And
he needed that game, and he's not looked as dynamic for a period of time. But I agree, he was so pivotal for us. Yesterday, and he needed to do it. He needed that game where he gets off the chain.
Yeah, but I think one of the things there is I think Sydney. I don't think they invested a lot of time into him. Other teams do, but I don't think Sydney did it all. And he blew up the guy he was playing on very, very quickly, and that's why he just got off the chain later, because he was just running away from him. He couldn't go with him. And I don't know that every team will make that mistake, because Hunter and Langdon basically did what they wanted, and it was damaging. Yeah.
Yep. Hunter was brilliant. I thought he had another wonderful game. He's had a really great start to his Melbourne career as well. I almost put him in 8.5 out of 10 category in his first 3 rounds. He was awesome against Brisbane, one of the few shining lights. And then yesterday he backed up again, kicked 2 goals, had 23 touches. As you said, kind of did what he wanted. The thing I really like about him, which was evident yesterday when I was watching, was he typically takes first option and he does the fundamentals right. He doesn't overcomplicate it. He doesn't try and do anything rash. He doesn't try to go down a rabbit hole or try to break tackles and run through people. He knows his limitations, and maybe some of the negatives yesterday were the fact that Jack Viney, Neil Bullen, and a few other blokes were trying to run through packs, and they got caught holding the ball at different times, and they didn't take first option. Lockie Hunter's a very clever, intelligent footballer, and I'm really impressed with the way that he's integrated himself into the team already. I love the way that he keeps his wit. He's neat, very neat, and I love the way that he's
an easy, neat. What a luxury again!
Got him for nothing.
Got him for nothing. Thanks for coming. And I reckon we'll play every game this year.
I think the other thing,
100%.
The best way to sum him up as well is I think what he lacks in leg speed, he makes up in head speed. He's a very smart footballer. He seems to find space even when he's not that fast. And I think one thing that's helped us this year, I think with him in particular, is his ability to keep speed on the ball. He's used to playing in that fashion.
Yeah.
So he's not he keeps the ball moving. He doesn't hold it for too long. He's a good kick. He makes good decisions. He's used to playing a little bit more scrappy. And I think sometimes with Melbourne last year, we got a little bit too cute. And I think that's one thing that we've benefited from, is having a couple more players that are happy to keep speed in the ball and are comfortable doing that. So I think that's another area that he's sort of complemented the newer playing style that we're going with. which requires that.
Good call. Good call.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to...
Sorry, this is the only thing I want to get out from today's exercise other than enjoying this conversation, which I've missed. But Neil Bullen, what a, like, hand on heart, rinsed him for years. But it's a full circle love here. He's almost my favourite player. Like, when did he become this pirouetting, can't touch, 360 spin, handball over the head, poised? He's been spectacular. Like, and he got caught yesterday. Like, I think there was a real obvious holding the ball, but otherwise, like, man, what a person that's shown that you can get every single inch of your talent out of yourself. That guy's done it, and he's actually improving year on year. Like, he's perfect. You know, now when he gets it, I'm not stressed. I'm like, oh yeah, Nibbler's got it. There'll be a good result. Same as Spargo. Like, both of those guys, I think, me included, that were naysayers, they're just going, yep, we're actually really good AFL footballers.
Yeah.
How good?
I agree.
Neil
they
Bullen.
know they belong now. Neil Bullen's fantastic, and it's a great point out, and he deserves his due praise, Toff, because it's him, Spargo, Chandler, these blokes. We put it on the agenda back end of last year when we were doing our review, Benny. We were speaking about how people were blaming the tall forwards for not coming to the party, which was an obvious thing. We did get beaten airily a lot in our forward 50, and teams took advantage of that. But it was also the smaller brigade that needed to apply more pressure, and they needed to be a lot clever and cuter with their ball going inside 50. Spargo, Neil Bullen, Chandler, they were one of the very reasons why we were able to keep the pressure on, we were able to hold our space when we were defending, and just make it really hard for Sydney to get through our press. One thing with Sydney, you have to apply pressure and you have to be insanely disciplined behind the ball, because all they want to do is they want to run off half back as quickly as they can. They want to take it down the boundary line like they do, and then look for that corridor quick. Look for that corridor kick as quickly as they can. I got there in the end. And I loved how disciplined Melbourne were, and I thought those three in particular were really clever at the way that they either A, guarded space, or B, applied pressure, and it meant that Sydney couldn't go quickly and they had to shift it wide, and it slowed down their ball movement. So it's a great point. It's a great pick out. And just while we're on all these unsung heroes who are not in your top brass, you're all Australians that we referred to before, Charlie Spargo had the best 6-possession game of all time. He kicked 2 and he set up 1. So he was directly involved in a goal for every 2 possessions. I know this is the thing I love about Charlie Spargo. He just doesn't need much ball to have an impact on a game. And it's proven. Go and look at his stats. He's one of the most high impact but low possession players in the entire competition. He's just clinical. The guy just hits targets. He's poised. That little pirouette, talking about pirouettes, Toff.
And the hit,
the little one from Spargy.
Was it to Brown? Did he hit Brown?
Benny Brown?
Yeah.
Oh, and he hit the witch's hat. Oh, far out. I'm buying into it now, Toff. And
Yeah.
it was
No,
it was brilliant.
It was good.
And you're like, that's Charlie Spargo. That's Charlie Spargo in a nutshell. Not only that, oh, mate, he took the smallest hanger of all time.
He's never been that high. So anyway. Never been that high. Unbelievable. I couldn't believe he got
cute.
it. No, not like that. No, he was 6 feet off the ground. That's a lot for a 4-foot player.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's half his body height.
Yeah,
it was huge from Lil Chuckler. No, he was brilliant. But boys, I think we'll look to start wrapping up here, but
yeah,
it was a great win. We're looking good. I think the Eagles lost 7 players in the Derby, which is staggering. I saw a headline saying 7 down in the Derby for the Eagles. And I was like, what? 7? I think it was Liam, Ryan, McGovern,
Shield. Oh, Shuey, sorry.
I think Shuey, I think Cripps went down. So, I mean, there's a big opportunity coming into this week.
See Adam.
Big opportunity. Yeah, see Adam. Yeah. But there's a chance to start getting on a bit of a run. So the games are looking good, boys. And this is where Melbourne need to start being absolutely ruthless.
Have to be.
We've just beaten Sydney. We've got West Coast away. We've got Essendon at Adelaide Oval. We've got the Tigers on Anzac Eve. We've got North Melbourne at the G. We've got Gold Coast away. And then we've got Hawthorn. It's a good run. We must capitalise now and start to build some serious form and momentum, because that's as good a period of the season from a fixture list point of view that we're going to get. It gets a lot tougher after that. We've got to go like Port away, Carlton at the G, Collingwood, and it will start to get really tricky. So if Melbourne want to set up their season and lay a platform and lock down a top 4 spot, we can actually start to really lay those foundations in the next 6 to 7 weeks, because that's as kind of fixture list as you'll probably ever see, like honestly. And if we're ruthless and good enough, we need to go and win every game. We should be winning every game. We're going to be favourites in every game. I think we're favourites every week though. But that's the big thing for me. It's like, well done, you're 2-1. I think we all would agree we wanted to be minimum 2-1 with the first 3. The first 3 were tough on paper. Brizzy at the Gabba, Sydney, who are our bogey side historically for the last 2 decades, the Doggies, who I think proved the other night that they're still a good side. They were hiding for a little bit in that first fortnight. So to come through 2-1, we've done well.
Yep.
So that's the big.
If you produce anything near your best, like it's a good sign for things to come. But like you said, the games you should win, you must win, because like you said, on the back half of the year, you need some buffers for a few aberrations. So if we want to be top 4 to make sure we get the double chance, which I think is really the only thing, and a home final, right? Like that's what's critical.
Yep.
100%. So Benny, any last thoughts, any last takeaways before we wrap it up?
Just to wrap that up, I think if we do set up a nice buffer in the next few weeks, I think what it does is allow us to maybe the luxury of using a bit more of that depth as well that we've got running around in the VFL. I think I'm hoping we learned a valuable lesson last year, which is like playing the same side every week and then expecting them to be able to like run through a final series doesn't necessarily always work. And then a lot of other teams have very well rested senior players. So I think what I'd like to see is if we can really set ourselves up here and then there's this next patch of games that you outlined, is that we can start to explore that depth and blood some other players that have been playing well in the VFL and get some different players through the side. I think it keeps us unpredictable as well, because it means that teams can't always just see the same side over and over and over again and get that footage and be able to study it all the time. It makes us more unpredictable when we do come up against those other sides, because they're not used to seeing the same mix of players.
Seriously, good shout. Like what's it with Geelong? Like we do have older legs, and as much as I hate Cameron Ling, it was a good point. Like I'd rather Melksham 100% for a quarter than running at 60% for 3 quarters. Like if you can be sensible with your decisions around who comes in and when throughout the year, and also give young guys opportunities, how good.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that, Toff. And boys, just a really quick answer before we do go. I'll go to Toff first. Do you keep Petty forward or do you send him back? Thoughts? What do we
maintain the rage, see what happens in a few weeks, give yourself a good sample size, and then reassess. But if he's versatile enough, which he's demonstrated that he is, and he's capable kicking goals, we just need him to be that option. I think continue and see whether the experiment works or not.
Benny,
I'm the same.
Forward.
That's my. I'd be the same answer as Toff. Like let's see how it goes, and just depending on what side we play, if we need him back there, if they've got a few more big quality tools, then maybe we move him back. But I think while Max is out, I think it makes a lot of sense to have someone with his sort of presence in that forward line. So I think it makes the other players stand a bit, walk a bit taller.
And just a couple of key takeaways from me. Toff's accountant jibe at Benny Lee. You've probably had a go at half of the.
he's in finance, but like, you know,
it doesn't offend me. It doesn't offend me. I'm a half Indian guy who wears glasses. It's safe to assume I either work in IT or an accountant. It's a pretty safe assumption, I think.
It wasn't that. It was more I was thinking about the DeeBrief listenership and the demographic. You've probably offended half of them, I would have thought. Probably half of them.
It's okay.
I mean,
it's okay. Accountants are used to it.
That's okay.
We're used to when people ask you what you do and you say I'm an accountant. We're used to people being like, "Oh, yeah, I was doing my taxes the other day." It's like I'm not a tax accountant, but yeah, like it's often the response.
You get the same. Hey, I've got this fine. It's like,
yeah, that's good.
Can we get a poll? Can we get everyone to write in? If you're an accountant and you listen to the DeeBrief, let us know. Let us know. Are you offended or do you love it and just embrace it? We'll find out. There'll be a few people that write in. And the last point I wanted to make.
I think that's.
It looks like he could easily be an intern at EY. Yes, in audit, 100%.
Yeah, that's what I see. At the MG, whatever, like, you know.
Yeah, definitely looks like he could be.
He does. And the last thing I'll say,
in a nice sort of charcoal grey suit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe a salmon pink shirt on a Friday, just to really spice it up.
Pair of RMs, just, you know.
Yeah, got to have a pair of brown RMs for that. Don't worry about it. It's a standard.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, I better go because my daughter's crying and my wife is probably going to lose her mind at me if I stay on this call any longer. But it's been lovely to speak to you, boys.
Miss you, Benny.
Love you and leave you. Callum Mills, remember that. Callum Mills.
Okay.
Yeah. Callum
Mills. All right, boys, it's been a pleasure. Toff, you're a good man. Wrap it up there. Love you and leave you. Bye-bye. And just the last point, Jacob Van Rooyen. Ooh, we love that. Just a cult figure immediately, instantaneous, great from the Melbourne supporters. Just before I do go, just a big shout out and a big thank you. And I say this a lot, but it does mean a lot to us here at the DeeBrief. All the people that sign up to DeeBrief Premium, I've said it many times before, it is one of the real and true reasons why we can continue to do this podcast. So all of your contributions are very much appreciated. We absolutely love doing the podcast. It was great bumping into a few listeners of the show yesterday who had some kind words to say. Honestly, thank you. So all the DeeBrief subscribers out there, if you haven't signed up, as I said before, all of those contributions go into running the podcast. We certainly don't turn over a profit or anything. We're just making ends meet here, and we absolutely just love it. We've ramped it up with the video this year, which is fantastic. So we're in that studio. It's very costly. So all that money is going back into the product, which is great. DeeBrief beanies and scarves, you'll see them on our merch store. If you want to go and purchase some of them again, that means we've got some money in the kitty to continue to do what we love doing. And then just the other point I wanted to make as well is if you haven't listened to the Lockie Hunter interview that we did last week, that is on DeeBrief Premium. So some people, maybe they needed a reminder, they didn't see it, who have signed up to DeeBrief Premium. If you want to go and listen to that, that's on the feed. He was fantastic, a very smart fella actually, enjoyed what he had to say and how he's integrated himself into the club and the culture, and he's performing really well. So you can go and have a listen to that. We'll be back in the studio on Thursday night. We're going to try and twist Nugget's arm and get him back in there because it's been a long time since we've had Nugget in the studio. So we're going to try and see if we can get him down for Geelong. So it'll be myself, Marker, and hopefully Nuggets. If not, we'll get Slammer in, the ring-in, who was in fine fettle yesterday himself, and we had a couple of beers in the aftermath. After beating the Swans, it's been a long, long time. It's been bloody frustrating, to be honest. They've had the wood over us for many, many years, so it was very sweet to soak it in with all the red and blue faithful yesterday. Big chance for Melbourne to kick on now. I think the benchmark has been set. That's the level of performance that we want to see every week now until we get Big Maxi into the side, and can't wait to see little Cozzy running around again against the Eagles. I'm going to love you and leave you all. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll catch you on Thursday.